How many times did you ignore death today? An ambulance passed you on the street. Someone died in the news. You walked past a funeral home. Every day we pass by death, and then we simply continue. In 1917, Kafka wrote a short story, The Coffin. 8 people and 2 creatures gather around a coffin, and then the lid opens. A coffin was finished. To deliver it to the undertaker, the cabinet maker loaded it onto a handcart. It was a dreary, rainy day. An elderly gentleman came from a side street, stopped in front of the coffin, and gave it a light prod with his cane. Then he struck up a conversation about the coffin business. A woman came along the main street carrying a shopping bag. She nearly collided with the gentleman, recognized him as an acquaintance, and stopped. The cabinet maker's apprentice came out of the workshop to ask the master for instructions about the next job. The cabinet maker's wife appeared at the upstairs window holding a baby in her arms. The master called up from the street to amuse the child. The gentleman and the woman with the shopping bag also looked up and smiled. A sparrow, thinking it had found something to eat, flew down and hopped about on top of the coffin. A dog sniffed around the wheels of the handcart. Then suddenly, from inside the coffin, came a violent knocking on the lid. The sparrow flew off and circled the handcart uneasily. The dog barked furiously. As if ashamed that it had failed to sense the event sooner, as if it, above all, had the duty to be first to notice, the dog was more agitated than anyone. The gentleman and the woman with the shopping bag leapt to the side and stood there, arms spread wide. The apprentice made a sudden decision, jumped up onto the coffin and sat down firmly on the lid. Better that than have the lid open and someone climb out. But the moment he landed, he seemed to regret it, yet lacked the courage to jump back down and refused to budge no matter how much the master scolded him. The wife upstairs had probably heard the noise, but couldn't make out what it was. Certainly didn't suspect it was the coffin, couldn't make out what was happening below, and just stared with wide eyes. Whether he had caught the scent of something or simply felt uneasy, a policeman approached, hesitantly. The coffin lid burst open with a bang. The apprentice tumbled off to the side. A short, collective cry went up. The wife disappeared from the window. She was surely racing down the stairs with the baby still in her arms. And the thing that had been tightly shut inside the coffin. Kafka stopped there. The thing that had been tightly shut inside the coffin. He did not finish the sentence. Why? He did not leave the answer unwritten. He left it to you. Let us read this story carefully. First, the characters. 10 beings gather around this coffin. Every one of them is near death, and every one of them looks away. The first, the master cabinet maker. He made the coffin. He loaded it onto the handcart. For him, the coffin is a product. Death is a job. Notice, even as the lid is being knocked from inside, he is scolding his apprentice about work. The coffin is making sounds, and he is thinking about the next order. The second, the elderly gentleman. He gave it a light prod with his cane. This one sentence is the heart of the story. A coffin is a vessel of death, the place every human being will eventually occupy, and he gives it a prod. For this gentleman, death is a curiosity, something to observe from a distance, something that has nothing to do with him. The third, the woman with the shopping bag. She notices the coffin and begins chatting beside it. The coffin becomes background scenery for her social life. Everyday conversation continues right next to death. The fourth, the apprentice. His reaction is the most absurd and the most human. The moment the lid is knocked, he makes a decision. He jumps on top of the coffin. Why? Better to sit on the lid and hold it shut than have it open and someone climb out. But the instant he lands, he regrets it. He can't come back down. He won't move no matter how much he's scolded. This is the essence of Kafka's humour. When confronted with an absurd situation, human beings take action. Action that changes nothing, solves nothing, but feels necessary. So they just sit there. The fifth, the wife. She alone was not watching the coffin. She was at the upstairs window, tending to her baby. She heard a sound, but she couldn't imagine it was the coffin. She didn't understand what was happening below. She just stared with wide eyes. And then she disappeared, racing down the stairs with the baby in her arms. Here is Kafka's greatest device. Upstairs, a newborn life, a baby. Downstairs, a vessel of death, a coffin. Life and death exist in the same building, and when death opens its mouth, the one holding life runs straight toward it. The sixth, the sparrow. The sparrow came thinking it had found food. It mistook a coffin for a feeding ground. But when the knocking came, the sparrow flew off uneasily. Only the sparrow felt something, not through reason, through instinct. The seventh, the dog. The dog is the most honest creature here. As if ashamed that it had failed to sense the event sooner, as if it above all had the duty to be first to notice, the dog was more agitated than anyone. Kafka is laughing here. The dog knew it should have been the first to notice. It wasn't. So, after the knocking came, it barked louder than anyone. This, too, is a portrait of the human being. We miss what we should have caught, and make the most noise once it's too late. The eighth, the policeman. Whether he had caught the scent of something or simply felt uneasy, a policeman approached hesitantly. The policeman is a symbol of order, and yet he approaches hesitantly. Even power hesitates before death. Now, a question. Where does modern society put death? In private hospital rooms, in the white rooms of funeral homes, behind the tinted glass of hearses, outside the frame of our smartphone screens. We believe death can be managed. Put it in a coffin, close the lid, load it on a handcart, deliver it to the undertaker, and it's done. It was the same in Kafka's 1917. Modernization had made death something for professionals to handle. Death was separated from daily life, pushed somewhere out of sight. And yet, Kafka wrote, "The lid opens." One final note on the connection to der Gruftwächter, the warden of the tomb. In that play, written around the same time, a warden fights every night to stop the dead from escaping their tomb. In The Warden of the Tomb, someone is trying to prevent it. In the coffin, no one tried at all. The gentleman prodded it with his cane, the woman made conversation, the apprentice asked about the next job, the wife tended to her baby, the sparrow looked for food, the dog sniffed the wheels, the policeman approached hesitantly. No one tried to keep it shut, and so the lid opened. The thing that had been tightly shut inside the coffin, Kafka stopped here. Kafka's work is often called absurd, but is it really absurd? The gentleman prodded it with his cane, because deep inside he believed death had nothing to do with him. The woman made conversation, because deep inside she believed daily life continues, even beside death. The apprentice jumped on the lid, because deep inside he felt he had to do something. The wife ran downstairs, not knowing why, because deep inside she needed to protect what she loved. Every one of them simply acted on what they had been hiding in the depths of their hearts. What Kafka drew was not an absurd world. It was the moment when what is ordinarily hidden, the truest impulses of human beings, suddenly burst out into the open. When the coffin lid flew open, what burst out may not have been only the dead. What is it that you have been keeping tightly shut inside yourself? Thank you for listening to Midnight Audiobooks. The Coffin by Franz Kafka. From Kafka's Fables, translated by Osamu Ikeuchi, Iwanami Bunko. This is part of our Kafka series. Those Who Run Past and The Knock at the Manor Gate are also available on this channel. If this story stayed with you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Good night.